Hi, I'm Sean.
I'm Rhonda.
Hey, we want to talk about a verse in the Bible that says that a man should honor his wife as unto a weaker vessel. And I think there can be a lot of misunderstanding about what that weaker vessel really means.
So let's look at that. We thought we'd do a study together on it and just see what does the word say about
Yeah,
that.
so the verse is in 1 Peter 3:7. It says, "Likewise, you husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered." Well, first of all, this is instruction to the husband to dwell with the wife in a knowledgeable way, and that word knowledge is the Greek word gnosis, which is dealing with this more of a science, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think when we consider this, it's not just flying by the seat of his pants, doing whatever feels
True.
normal and natural. It's figuring it out and gathering knowledge, information about how to dwell with her. And I think in the world today, we see so many people dwelling together with no knowledge, just
It's
doing
a
whatever
study.
they think.
It could
Yeah,
be creating a study.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so now we get into giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and the honor is showing a value.
Yeah, it actually means value that is money paid, valuables, esteem, especially of the highest degree, dignity, precious, price.
The weaker vessel is, if you think about, maybe we use the idea of fine china, right? It's more fragile and also has a higher price.
I think people stop as the wife is weaker. And I think that people place a lot of emphasis on how weak she is compared to him.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great teaching around taking care of her because she's not as strong physically. But notice it says, as a weaker vessel, not that she is a weak vessel.
True.
But the giving of honor is related to the fact that she is like a weaker vessel. So when we think, first of all, to give honor, we would first want to understand what in the world is a weaker vessel. And like Sean said, you think of fine china, you might think of expensive crystal, maybe your silver flatware, your vase that is invaluable.
A collectible.
A collectible. These are all
Crystal.
things that we would consider strength without strength.
Yeah. Something that has is thought of as having a higher value
Yeah.
for a particular purpose.
And so when you see a comparative as a weak vessel compared to what? If he is not a weak vessel, maybe he's a strong vessel. He's a more durable vessel. When we think of vessels that are not weak or fragile vessels, we're talking about in relationship to a vessel. So a vessel that you would have would not necessarily have a lot of muscle, but it would be related to perhaps its use and the material it's made of and how it's constructed. If he's a stronger vessel, maybe he's kind of like the cast iron skillet, or the stainless steel cookware, or the stoneware.
What if you think of some of your sensitive electronics?
Right.
An electronic device is more fragile.
It's a weak vessel compared
Right.
to other devices.
Compared to a sledgehammer
Right.
or an anvil. So you do have to, but what if we are fulfilling God's design for us in a given space, and we don't need to be comparing ourselves to each other? Well, you're not like me, or I'm not like you.
Yeah.
And we say, okay, each of us has a given role to fulfill from God, and we're
Yeah.
not duplicates of each other.
And if we think of God is looking at her as worthy of honor, like you would give honor to a weaker vessel. And so when we look at weaker is a comparative word. It's like this vessel is weaker than another vessel. And so we would say if she's more like the fragile china, glassware, and he's more like the sturdy, strong cast iron or the stainless steel, like we said, you're going to treat a china teacup a lot differently than you would your stoneware. They could look very similar, but the difference is the material they're made of as well as the way they're constructed. So you think about what goes into making fine china or expensive crystal or say 24 karat gold versus 10 karat gold. We know 10 karat gold is stronger than 24 karat gold. So we could say something made of 24 karat gold would be a weaker vessel than something made of 10 karat gold.
But has a higher value.
The value is different. And that's what honor is all about, is placing a value on the fragile vessel. And we think about these vessels, like we said earlier, entertaining guests. This is, we pull out our good stuff. This more breakable, not with our 5 and 10-year-old children who might break it. We might use plastic glasses, which we did. The stoneware that's thick and hefty. Plastic dishes
And
even.
something that's of a lower value, so that if they drop and break it, you're not really,
It's not too big
you
of
don't
a
feel
deal.
like, well, I'm really missing something,
But think about your decor in your house.
Yeah.
That's nicer and all. You bring these out for fellowship, relationship,
Wow.
environment.
And if you bring out nicer dishes for guests, is it not that you're conveying value on the guest?
Right. And also you're creating atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It's one atmosphere when I bring out the paper plates. It's a different atmosphere when we bring out the everyday dishes. But it's a very different atmosphere when I bring out the nicer dishes and glasses.
Yeah.
And so what kind of honor then would be due to our more fragile vessels when we think about that?
Well, like you said, it's more intricate, maybe more elaborate detail.
Probably a lot more went into the construction of that material. It's not your everyday material.
Yeah.
So she's not like him. She's made from different material for different use.
Yeah.
But God feels that what he invested and packaged in her as the help that he constructed to give to him, to the man, he considers that to be worthy of honor.
So I think a big thing here would be to not look at weaker means lesser.
Right.
Weaker as unto the weaker doesn't mean lesser. There's obviously not lesser on the intellectual side or on, because he does say there that as being heirs together. So he's creating more of saying you are on
Yes.
this equal plane.
Right.
Because you're heirs together or joint heirs.
Yeah. And I was thinking about in 1 Corinthians 1, verses 25 and 27.
This is good. Yeah. So basically this is saying because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, the weakness of God is stronger than men, and God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things that are mighty. So I think in our brain, trying to put the concept of the weakness of God, we don't even think those things even match up. But he's saying that you might say is weakness is stronger than men.
Well, look at the way the world would look at it. I mean, as believers, I think we say, oh my goodness, everything God does is strong, noble, mighty, powerful. But think about the way the world would view God. They think religion is weak, going to church is weak, thinking you have to do all these things is
crutch.
weak.
Yeah.
Not being able to do certain things, be your own boss. But the miracles of God, now that's powerful. Kind of defining that there are some things that the world would view as weak. But the things the world would see as weak are actually what God thinks that's kind of a nifty thing to confound
Yeah.
the strong with it.
What if God is saying, I can obtain my objective, what I want to do, through this means that other people discount?
Right. And doesn't that require faith?
Yeah.
Doesn't that require trust?
Yeah.
To say that there are certain things God would ask of me that my flesh would say, that's weak, that's unnecessary, that's not powerful. How could that get results for me?
And so this opens up where in Genesis 2, where he said it's not good that the man should be alone, I'm going to make someone to help you.
Yeah.
And that word is the Hebrew word ezer, which is mostly referring in the Old Testament to God
Yeah.
being our
God's
helper.
help. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I keep thinking of, because I usually will open the door for you,
Right.
you know, whenever I can, getting in the car, or hold your hand, you know, crossing over, you know, some obstacle or something or
Mud,
other like
slick
that,
areas.
right? And so people can look at that and, you know, and have heard women before, don't do that for me, you know, probably thinking that oh, you're doing that because you're seeing I'm lesser than you and
Yeah.
or feeble and I need your help.
Yeah.
But where we see God said the weakness of God is stronger than men, what I'm actually doing is I'm helping my help.
Yeah.
I'm opening the door if I'm opening the car door for you to get in or open the door to a building for you to go in,
Yeah.
I'm helping my help. You are the help God has given me, and I'm creating space for that. And recognizing and respecting, honoring that help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it does show an honor. It's not that I can't open my own car door.
Right.
It's not that I can't manage over a muddy or slick piece
Right.
of ground.
Right.
It's that Sean is honoring me to offer his hand, to open the door. And so if we think about it, God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things that are mighty. I think it's easy for people to put their trust in what they can see and feel and hear and touch,
Yeah.
like physical strength.
Yeah.
Yet God has powerful things that are unseen. And I think it's easy to discount the unseen things, which is a lot of what the woman brings to the table. She cares for the relationship. You can't see relationship. Emotions, ideas that maybe he doesn't initially have, or an angle, a way of looking at things that's different.
Relational dynamics.
Right. And so what if God chose what he packaged in the woman? Think about the differences in feminine and masculine. Feminine is what God took out of him in Genesis and placed in her that would be helpful. What if the man is viewing that which God packaged to be helpful as a weak thing? Because I know we hear a lot of men that'll say about her emotions or this or that about the things that she cares about like they're weak. Because in the male world, it doesn't look muscular, it doesn't look mighty or noble or powerful. And so if we're not looking at it from a spiritual angle, we can be confounded because it appears weak to the natural mind.
And so I think the challenge probably for most married couples is combining the attributes and the strengths that one spouse has with the different strengths and attributes the other one has, and seeing that although they kind of come from different vantage points and different perspective and a different angle, you might say, they actually go together.
They do. They're complementary.
Yes.
And if you look at just the difference in the male and female brain, it's like they appear so opposite, but we're actually caretakers of such very different angles that we create a full and whole experience.
Yeah. Right. And I just love it really to see that for you men, the woman, the wife, is the one that he packaged your help in.
Yeah.
in that. And so that makes you want to pursue, oh, what's that you're saying? What is it that you're presenting that maybe I have discounted and overlooked and haven't seen as important, but I need to take note of that. And then just seeing that men, your wife is going to make you a better person if you listen.
Yeah. Don't you think the world kind of programs us to, I should be able to do this all by myself?
Yeah.
I'm strong enough to handle this. I'm wise enough to handle this myself.
Yeah.
And yet, when we depend on each other, it can feel like a weak spot, yet God put that together to strengthen us. And so we have to trust that God knew what he was doing when he packaged us very differently and said, now go be one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I love this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 22 through 26, he says, "No, much more those members of the body which seem to be more feeble or weak are necessary, and those members of the body which we think to be less honorable. Upon these we bestow more abundant honor, and our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness," or this would be beauty, "for our comely parts have no need, but God has tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to that part which lacked, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another. And whether one member suffer, all the members suffer with it, or one member be honored, all the members rejoice with it."
That is loaded.
It is. So,
Let's break it down.
Yeah. So, does she seem weak? Notice he uses the that word in there. I'm trying to find it. Those members of the body which seem to be more feeble or seem to be weak.
It's just like in 1 Peter 3, he's not saying she is a weaker vessel.
Seems that way.
And here it's not that they are weak, but they seem to be. And so I feel like this scripture is helping us. Obviously it's talking about the body of Christ, but also when we are one, we are the same body, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bones. So it applies to both ways. Things that are contained in our spouse that seem weak to us are necessary. We have to just be able to see it as necessary and trust God that it is necessary.
And so, I think it would be obvious to most people that the woman carries that aspect of beauty, right? I mean, men can be handsome, but I think for the most part, it says that a woman's hair is given to her for her glory. It's kind of her glory.
Yeah.
And so, if you think about it, why did God think that putting beauty on the wife and glory was necessary? I mean, you look at, I think about the tabernacle in the wilderness. Yet in that place, it wasn't just a functional place, like, let's get the bare bones, let's get these walls up and these things, and let's make it real basic. No, he put glory even in a tabernacle in the wilderness. It had some pretty elaborate tapestry type design and furs and different gold, right?
Yeah.
The ark was gold. And
elaborate artwork.
Yeah, you're right. So we aren't just talking about, sometimes, not to get into all of this, but some people might say, why in the church do they need that crystal chandelier? You know what I'm saying? But God put in his temple some elaborate things that he wanted for beauty and packaged, and making the comparison with a wife.
Right.
Carrying the beauty and the value, and it's not just all utility oriented. It is important to have that.
Well, even in the temple, you would see the fragile vessels and the stronger vessels together.
Yeah.
And so, does one think the other is less honorable? If so, we're missing something, because God placed honor. And that temper means to combine, assimilate, mix with. And so God assembled us together, combined us together in such a way that he gave more abundant honor to the part that lacked.
Yeah.
And so if she's viewed as a weaker, fragile vessel, the fine china, if we could just kind of think of maybe one thing, God placed an honor, a more expensive value on that fine china. So that little teacup that you pull out, that's your nice little teacup or your nice little
Yeah.
glasses, God put honor on it. And so you don't look at your fine china and say, pitiful. It's just pitiful to pull out that dainty, pathetic thing
Yeah.
to eat with when
Like
we could eat with this big old
Yeah.
stoneware here.
Yeah, I can drink just as well out of that plastic Solo cup.
That's right. But yet God put honor to make up for anything that lacked. And yet in the world, when we're not seeing the things of God, we miss the honor that makes up the difference. So if God is placing an honor, we should place an honor.
Yeah, yeah. Honor. Oh, wow. Isn't that in 1 Samuel, didn't he say that he would honor those that honor him?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a man will get the value from his being married to that woman if he honors her. If he dishonors it, then yeah, he's not going to be be the recipient of that help
Yeah.
by dishonoring her.
And the information given to the husbands in 1 Peter 3 was to give honor because she is like a weaker vessel. Give honor to her like you would
As
give
unto,
honor
yeah.
to your priceless vessel.
Yeah, yeah.
And so where she lacks strength, the china teacup is honored because it is china, fine china. That schism there is an interesting word.
Yeah, it's division or a gap. So he's saying that there not be any schism or there not be any division.
I think of that as distance, disconnect.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, when we were talking about that earlier, divorce, I think, became
That would be
a
division.
word. That would definitely be a division.
Yeah.
So a man, even in Matthew, when they talked about, they used the word putting away, when a man puts away, which is the concept of divorce, but that's in the Bible, they called it a putting away. Well, in what ways is a man putting his wife at arm's length, putting her away? He's maybe not divorcing her in the legal sense.
Yeah,
But
that would be distance and division.
In what way is he saying, oh, I don't want what you bring to the table?
Yeah. And when we think about it, God tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to that part which lacked. Why? That there should be no schism in the body. So where there is schism, or what is schism, you might say, the division or gap, where there's the division, the gap, the distance, the disconnect, it's because someone doesn't see the honor. They only see the part lacking.
True.
They don't think of your glass as 1/3 full. God filled the 2/3 with honor. But you can look at the glass if you only see what they have and what they bring to the table as, wow, there's only 1/3 in that cup. But if you realize the other 2/3 is God's honor, the difference is what a person isn't seeing. And so if we can see the honor God put in there to make up the difference, we wouldn't have schism because of the honor we would be showing.
So think about in 2 Corinthians, he talks about they comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. So making the dishonor is probably conveyed when a person is comparing their spouse to themselves and say, in relation to me, you're different, you're this, right? I mean, that can happen in any level in society where one person is comparing themselves to another and they esteem that either themselves to be lacking or insufficient, or the other one to be lacking or insufficient because of difference.
When you go camping, you might say, goodness, the china teacup doesn't fit the camping experience. It could be easily broken in this environment. But when you look at the china teacup, you're thinking of fellowship and relationship. And so recognizing, is one dominating the other, demanding more attention, controlling the other, where God made us what we are in our own right. We have our own skills and sensitivities and wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and neither is discounted because God put an honor on what's not easily understood
Yeah. Yeah.
and seen by the flesh.
So when you talk about that, the schism being a gap or a divide, the one thing that a woman does is she creates a bridge relationally
yeah.
to
When she
to
senses a
connect.
gap.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I mean I think it's understood that there's that extra layer of connectivity between the right and left hemisphere and the brain for the woman.
Yeah.
Lots of connection. So
Yeah.
she communicates out of I want to connect, I want to connect.
True.
I want to keep connection. I want to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
That there be no schism, that there be
Yeah.
no break.
So when she senses distance, she's reaching out to reestablish that connectivity. You know, and it even says God looked for someone to
Yes.
stand in
Right,
the gap.
Right, right.
And so we don't want there to be gaps, and the gaps happen when we're devaluing something one of us brings to the table. You know, it also talks about there wouldn't be any schism, so that they would have the same care for each other. So if somebody suffers, everybody suffers with it. If one is honored, everybody's rejoicing. That suffering is to experience a sensation or impression, usually painful, to feel, have passion, suffer, vex. And so basically somebody is feeling something, and everybody else should suffer with it. That means to experience pain jointly or of the same kind. Sympathize. And so when one of us is feeling something, the other one should join in that feeling and
Which
experience.
isn't that what being sympathetic is?
Yeah.
Is that combined, one joining themselves to feel what the other person is feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you think about one of them is honored and the other one is rejoicing in that honor, basically if it happens to one of us, it happens to both of us. And so there's look at the extreme of emotion there. You've got suffering, experiencing emotion and pain, or whatever the emotion is. And so basically, are we able, when we look at these two extremes of emotions, suffering, honor, right? They're on the opposite ends of the spectrum, coming alongside whatever the experience is of the other.
You know, isn't that why we get married, right? Because we want to share life together with somebody else.
Yeah.
It's not that we obviously don't get married to remain as an individual, single-minded
Yeah.
person, and it is to share the joys of life, to help ease the burden during
Right.
difficult parts of life.
So are we able to lay aside our own experience to come alongside whatever it is our spouse is experiencing? It almost is like it's implied that that there should be no schism, but that the members should. So there needs to be mutual and equal care to the extent I'm experiencing whatever you're experiencing.
So if you're not sharing it, that means there's a schism.
There's a
gap, a division.
We are not connected. We are disconnected
Yeah.
in that moment. And
Yeah.
if we have a lot of moments where we have schism, where we have gap, disconnect, distance, guess what? The marriage starts falling apart, because to the extent we are bound together, we lack the division and the gap and the distance. But to the extent we allow the gaps, division, the schisms, we grow apart. And God doesn't want the body of Christ, He doesn't want the husband-wife relationship to drift.
Yeah.
And so we have to get in the moment with each other. That means we have to listen to some heart messages. What does it feel like to be you? What does it feel like to be married to me?
So the power of our marriage is in our union, our sharing,
Yeah.
our co-laboring, our coming together
Right.
and doing it to being one.
Right.
Which is what he said in the beginning, the two shall be one.
And it says, too, that spiritually we're baptized into one body. And this is a powerful example of two becoming one in marriage. We're one, but we're two. We're two, but we're one. So the body's not one member, but many.
Yeah.
So just as we recognize we have to blend into one, we have to also recognize we remain two unique individuals.
So just like someone that studies the operation of the physical body, it is one body
Right.
made up of, and then you can study all the different components. I mean, you obviously have specialists that specialize in the eye, the nose,
Right.
the ear, the mouth, the foot, the
Yeah.
whatever.
And you know, in the marriage, just like in the body of Christ, we don't want one part saying, well, if I'm not you, I must not be important. Neither do we want the other part saying, well, if you're not me, you're not important. I don't
True.
even need you. Those are divisions that
Right,
happen
right.
when we don't value the ear has its own gifts
Yeah.
and the eye has its own gifts, and both are equally important.
Right.
We want them all.
There's the aspect of somebody studying the eye is the eye that operates within itself and its function, but then
Yeah.
there is the effect that the eye has on the entire body
Yes.
when it's doing its
Yeah.
function best.
So schism is happening when we're basically there's friction between us because basically I'm seeing that my role is pretty important. I'm either overvaluing or undervaluing my role or your role, but we have to work together as a cohesive whole. So this is all about honoring,
Yeah.
seeing it the way God
And
sees it.
and hopefully this opens up that verse in 1 Peter 3 where he says
Yeah.
to honor the wife as unto the weaker vessel, because I think there's probably been a lot of misunderstanding about, discounting, she's just a weaker vessel.
Well, I think a lot of women also don't necessarily see themselves with the strength and the honor God has put on them because, I'm just the support. I'm just the help. As if God, that's not a big deal to God. God specially created us to be a help.
And I love that you brought that up because it reminds me of something we were talking about. A woman that for example, stays at home and raises the children, and she
yeah.
doesn't work outside the home, but you wouldn't minimize the role of the woman that was staying at home and her child was, say, Billy Graham,
Yeah.
or her child was some great leader
Right.
or something. You'd say, well, no, that woman has great value because she's actually training in a very close way
Right.
this powerful individual.
Yeah.
But actually that is taking place and molding and shaping
Yeah.
our generation.
And that verse, there's a verse that says, those that stayed at home still divide the spoils.
Yes, that's right. In Psalms.
Yeah. And so, ladies, we don't want to think, oh, I'm weak.
Yeah.
I'm just the weaker person.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't mean we're weak. It has to do with being fragile and made of a material that's worthy, that's priceless, that's worthy of honor. And so when we see ourselves as we're the part of the marriage picture that's the fine china, we're the silver flatware, we're the crystal glasses,
Yeah.
the invaluable vase or decor.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we're sitting there just for show. It means that we contribute to relationship, environment, atmosphere, and think about it. Those are the things the woman cares for especially.
Yeah. And that we're not duplicating each other's roles.
Right.
It's not, she doesn't have to be like him, he doesn't have to be like her. We each have our own lane,
Yeah.
but those go together. Wow. So we enjoyed this. We pray that you have a greater appreciation and understanding of what God is saying in His Word about the woman's role.